Yeah.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Buonasera, and welcome to the Co-Azit Italian Family History Group May 7th event. I'm Ron Seggi from Universal Studios, Florida. Tonight, we have a very special evening in store with our featured guest speaker, Chris Iacono from Bunna Bunoo Olive Grove. Please take your seats, and please take a moment to turn off your mobile phones. I hope you enjoy the evening.
I apologize that we are actually starting late tonight, but there was apparently a bad accident somewhere, and some people coming from Parramatta had a problem, and also from the city, so we thought we would just hold it up for 10 minutes. So I apologize for that, but we'll get through the evening, and it'll be a fun time. So, buonasera, signore and signori. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Co-Azit Italian Family History Group monthly event. My name is Art Phillips, the chairman of the group. It's great to see some new faces here tonight, and of course our regulars, who of course have been very, very faithful to the group for many, many years, and I appreciate your attendance. So a lot of people who haven't been here before may not actually know what the group is about, and so I just thought I would explain real quick about what the objectives are and what the purposes of the Italian Family History Group. It's the Co-Azit Italian Family History Group. Basically, the mission of the organization is, which is a non-for-profit association, is to promote and develop, aid and assist those interested in tracing and recording details of their Italian ancestors and their heritage, and to generally promote the passion and culture of Italy. We conduct various lectures and seminars from time to time, workshops, and of course these events. And we're actually there to sort of share information and stories and to help people with new places to go in terms of finding their roots and their heritage. And of course you may wonder, what is Co-Azit? Because we work under the auspices of Co-Azit. And what Co-Azit is, it's actually an abbreviation for the Italian Association of Assistants. And it was first established in 1968 under the auspices of the Italian government. And the initial aim of the organization was to assist the large numbers of Italian migrants who came to Australia post-War II era. And today, Co-Azit New South Wales is one of the major and most active ethnic voluntary agencies offering a wide range of services and programs from language, education, to various cultural activities. Hello, Diana. This is our lovely committee member, Diana, who is at our ticket desk, and we always thank Diana for all her work. Thank you, Diana. The Italian Family History Group has actually conducted their monthly meetings here at the Italian Forum for a number of years. We used to use the conference room upstairs, of course, and since the start of 2014, we have been very fortunate to use this new venue, which is called the Performance Hall or the Auditorium. And it's a beautiful space, it's a creative space, and it's an appropriate one for us, we think. I mean, our committee thinks, because it's actually allowed us to expand our production ideas a bit more than we had before. So I just wanted to take a moment to thank the ACA, which is the Australian Actors Centre Australia, for embracing us and believing in our mission and our purpose. In particular, I wanted to thank Dean Carey, the founding member and creative director here at the ACA, Alan Rendell, who's the operations and development manager, and Sada Gibbons, who's the coordinator of the center. it's a great organization. They have fantastic classes, a great program. And actually, I came here a couple of weeks ago on a Sunday afternoon, and I saw one of their events with their third-year students, and it was just like being on Broadway. It was just absolutely spectacular. So a round of applause for the Actors Center for all that they're doing. I think when you walked in, you probably would have been provided one of these sheets, which is a list of our events for 2014. And so if you haven't got it, I'll just explain real quick. Because our venue has been substantially improved, we think, this as opposed to the smaller conference room, because we're utilizing this, we obviously, we used to have our meetings the fourth Wednesday of every month, 9 times a year, with the exception of January, with the exception of July, with the exception of December. But because we have this new venue, which is being leased by the ACA, they had previous bookings. So unfortunately, we're not able to compensate the old schedule. So we had to change some of the dates from time to time. This is one of the changes, of course, right? And we apologize for that, but we're doing the best that we can. On our schedule for the year, every event is, except for 3, are actually the fourth Wednesday of the month. So this one, of course, is not one. And our next event, which is the 29th of May, which is a Thursday, by the way. We're trying to keep the Wednesdays, but this is a Thursday, and it's certainly not the third or fourth Thursday either. It's just so happened that way. It's going to be a spectacular event. We have Dr. Ann Rogerson from the University of Sydney. She is the head of Latin Studies at the university, and she's going to be talking about the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 AD and the destruction of the town of Pompeii. She will discuss eyewitness accounts of the disaster preserved in the letters of Pliny, the Younger, and set them in context with the Italy 2,000 years ago, where one couldn't expect any aid whatsoever from the state with a disaster like that. So I think we'll have a huge audience because we've had a lot of advertisements going out to the University of Sydney as well as the University of Western Sydney. And there's a lot of students and teachers who are interested, so I think we might actually fill the room that night. The other things that we're actually sort of working on our committee is that we're now involved with a new policy document with COASIT, which will be finalized in about, I'd say, a month. And we are now actually going to start an official membership. Besides people being able to come to these events and pay the entry fee of $5, we decided that we need to, because of the new policy document that we're doing with COASIT, is to actually have an official membership. And it's only going to cost $5 a year. And our year will be from the 1st of July through the 30th of June of the financial year. And becoming a member of the IFHG, the Italian Family History Group, we'll be able to offer certain things that non-members won't be able to have. And that is, for example, on Saturday afternoons, our treasurer and secretary is going to be holding special information sessions at one of the restaurants here to help people research their own family tree. So things like that. We're going to have some cooking classes hopefully later in the year. So members will receive a few basic things, and hopefully it'll be something that everybody would like to join officially, because I think we have to have an official membership situation. We have a brand new website. I don't know if anybody, well, you probably have seen it because you've gotten the actual newsletter, which is actually looking really, really good. And we thank our Vice Chairman, Roberto Junta, who's actually our film man up here tonight, for actually creating the site and servicing it for us. A couple more things I want to report before we actually do our event is there's a event up in Brisbane that happens once a year called the Italian Week, and a friend of mine actually runs it, and he called me about a month ago asking if the Italian Family History Group would be prepared to come up for one of the days, one of the events, to actually talk about the group to all the people that come to their events, and to send up one of our research and archiving experts. So we have myself, who's not the expert at archive. I'm not going to talk about the group. They're flying myself up, and also a ex-committee member, Fabian Losciovo. Yes, thank you. Losciovo. So we're flying up on the 30th of May, and we're going to do a talk on the 31st. And ironically enough, the Italian Week's actually on our website that we have Dr. Ann Rogerson speaking for us just a couple days before that event, and the topic that she's talking about. So anyway, so the coordinator contacted me and said, look, is there any way that you could put me in touch with Dr. Ann Rogerson, because we're doing a special film that afternoon on the Saturday on Pompeii, and it would be brilliant if we could borrow your speaker. I said, well, look, you have to talk to Ann about this. So anyway, so I put them in touch. So they're flying the three of us up. So Dr. Ann, just after her event here, is going to talk about the exact same thing. So it's a good thing for us, for the group, because it just increases awareness of what we do, and could possibly increase our membership. Two other things. One housekeeping thing, and on the 16th of May, if you're aware of it, there's the National Italian Ball that's happening, that Coazit is doing, and it's going to be happening at La Montage. So it should be a fun evening. It's a Friday night, and there's still some tickets available. Anybody that's interested, contact Coazit, just here on Norton Street, and sign up. I actually have a table of 11, myself. A few people from the group are coming in. So it should be a fun Friday night. The small bit of housekeeping thing is that your entry ticket that you have, I don't know what color it was this year, this month, is it yellow or orange? I'm not quite sure. Who has one on them? Right, the entry ticket that you have for $5. At the end of the night, we all go to a restaurant just around the corner here at the piazza called La Giada. And La Giada, which means the jar, if anybody doesn't understand Italian. And your entry ticket, if you hand that to the waitress at La Giada, you'll either get a free coffee or a free tea, or they will apply that ticket for a $2.50 discount for a glass of vino or pizza or whatever you want. So yeah, and they have a nice small menu for $20 for our group with pizza and pasta, if you want, and a glass of wine included. So that's what the ticket actually sort of gives you. Before I introduce one of our speakers, one of our committee members suggested from time to time, or each event, that I actually play a Italian folk song for you, because it's cultural, and we thought that besides the fact that you're here listening to guest speakers, that you might have a little bit of entertainment. So the piece I'm going to play is an instrumental piece. I do it on guitar, as you can see. It's not a tuba. It's a song. It was written in 1950 from a composer named Salvatore Esposito. And it's a song called Anima e Cuore, which means, in dialetto, it actually means heart and soul. But the actual English translation of the song with the lyrics is with all my heart and soul. And it's a very important song for me, because it's one of the songs that was my influence in terms of why I ended up doing what I do for a career. So I'll play you this song, and I hope you enjoy it. We okay, man? Yeah, there's something about Italian songs, especially the ones that were written from the great composers from Napoli. They're just so passionate and just so full of soul, just fantastic. Okay, so this brings us to a really important part of the night where I wanted to introduce our immediate past chairman, and his name is Dominic Olivolo, who is the founding member of the Italian Family History Group, which started in 1999. So I'd like to invite Dominic up here for 10 minutes to have a chat about his history.
Thanks, Art.
Good to see you. How you doing?
If I don't have this, I'll lose my way. But just for your information, ladies and gentlemen, that entertainment you saw earlier of this beautiful travelogue is on this DVD. It's one of 3 in a box set, and it's absolutely beautiful. You saw it yourself. It features the south of Italy, one DVD, the other DVD, the north of Italy, and the centrepiece on the middle of Italy. Now, it's a box set. If you're interested, I got my set after I saw that fellow Silvio Riviera on the Global Village program. It's available from Dimmix. If you're interested, it's called Visions of Italy. So if you're interested in getting a set, because I think it's something you can sit down and watch, it's absolutely magnificent.
Yeah.
Don't you agree?
Absolutely agree. So Dominic actually introduced the group to this about 4 or 5 months ago, and it's a 3-box set. One is a DVD of the north, one is a DVD of the south, and the other is of Sicily. Of course, because Sicily thinks it's its own country. But absolutely beautiful. So, well, we wanted to have Dominic here tonight to actually talk briefly about, his family heritage and how far back you've actually gone with your tree.
Well, I suppose everyone must think, what motivates us to do this, to do what I did? What really got me, unfortunately, was a time when we found out Mum had cancer in 1980. She had cancer of the pancreas. She had 6 months. Now, during that 6 months, so many relatives came to see Mum. I'd seen them through my whole life at different times, but I just didn't know where they fitted in. And Mum said to me, why don't you write it down? She had one of those photographic memories, and she could even remember who they were married to, and all this detailed cousins and uncles and aunts, everything. And I filled 2 exercise books of scribbled notes. That was in 1980. Little did I realise then the outcome of what's happened today. Because I'll talk now about Mum and Dad. Both Mum and Dad were born on the island of Salina, one of the Aeolian groups. Most of you here are from the Aeolian Islands, I know. My father is an only child. My grandfather, an only child. So there wasn't much to tell you there, was there? I'm back to 1850. He was a sailor, my grandfather, but wanted to improve himself. He decided to study and became a customs officer. and he graduated as a Marechal di Finanza, customs officer. And his first posting was to the island of Salina, and that's where he met his wife-to-be. Her surname was Ricciardo. So grandfather married Ricciardo, one child, my dad. Now, both Mum and Dad were born on the island of Salina, and Dad, being a Marechal di Finanza, retired when she found out he'd made this girl pregnant, and he retired from the service and set up a little shop. He had the post office shop there on the island of Santa Marina. He used to play the clarinet. I don't know how far what kind of a player he was, but he made sure that his son, my dad, studied the clarinet, because you sent him to Naples every year for 4 years to study the clarinet professionally. And so it was, after 4 years, Dad qualified and got his diploma. I still have his diploma at home, where he qualified as a classical clarinet player. Well, he was about 22 years of age at this stage, 21, 22 years of age, and I lived on the island of Salina. What did Mum and Dad do? You wouldn't believe this, would you? They eloped. They ran away from Santa Maria to Malta. And it didn't take long for grandmother to wake up. Hey, what's happened here? Where's my daughter? Call them back. And so Dad and Mum went back to live with her mother, and he became the favourite son-in-law. But that didn't help him, because he wanted to do something. Being a musician, what was left on the island? Fishing or agricultural work, be it what it may. So he took the opportunity of wanting to migrate. All the Italians on the islands migrated. They wanted to get away to do better for themselves. We wanted to go to the States. Just then, the door closed on the immigration to America. Alternative was Australia. I don't know who called him out here, but he arrived here with his clarinet and was work. He couldn't find work as a clarinet player then. He just got here. He worked in the fruit shop.
As they all
did, and he had a number of fruit shops. Mum arrived about 3 years later, 3 or 4 years later, and I was born in 1926. And it was only then that Dad set eyes on his firstborn child, my older brother Theodore. Theodore is a priest, a retired Catholic priest, currently living up at Borkham Hills in a retirement village there that the local bishop from Parramatta set up for them. He's still alive, but he's never been back to Salina. Not like me, I've been there 3 times, 4 times perhaps. Nevertheless, Dad, fruit shops, his idea was music. And during that time, because he became known in the Italian community because he was a musician, he was called upon by the different associations to provide a combination of players who might provide some music. He provided some concerts too. I found some old copies of concerts that the Italian consulate arranged in Sydney back in the 1930s, early 1930s and so forth. And the Cilioli Association, because that's where he came from, called upon him to form a combination of half a dozen players to form this music for social dancing for the Aeolians in Sydney.
Fantastic.
It was that he was the leader. And I'll tell you what, Mr. Di Lorenzo, you've heard that gentleman, the hairdresser? Yes. He used to play the violin with his brother. I didn't know anything at all about this till I went to a function and Mr. Lorenzo, and then he called me up, hey Dominic, hey, come here, I'll talk to you. He said, you're not Luigi Rigoli's son, are you? I said, yes, why? He said, sit down here. And he told me what happened with both he and his brother playing the violin on one occasion at the social dance, which were held at the Manly Wharf at Circular Quay. Upstairs was a very large room where they used to hold these fortnightly dances. Well, Chris said, when he's playing the music, his brother turned 2 pages over instead of one, they were playing the wrong piece of music. Anyhow.
Well, that's why I never knew this about your past, because you never told me about this, you know?
Well, I just never had time to fit it in with this.
Well, no, see, we never talk music. Anytime I talk to Dominic,
And he taught me
something here
to play the clarinet. Because as I grew up and went to local school, called a dago and all that sort of thing, you know that's the situation there. But I learned to play the clarinet for 3 years until I was called up and I joined the Royal Australian Air Force. And I couldn't take my instrument with me then, and that's where it faded. But I always loved the clarinet. I've got a collection of clarinet music at home that you have to see it to believe it. Nevertheless, it's a beautiful instrument.
Excuse me. So let's take a hands-up vote. How about next event, Dominic brings his clarinet, I bring my guitar, and we'll play Italian Kelly. Yeah, deal? No, okay, we'll practice. We have to do it this year. Sometime this year we'll do it.
I took the clarinet with me to the Air Force base, and I started practice in the church, back in the church hall there, and the men were throwing rocks onto the roof. I couldn't practice the scales, and Dad taught me professionally, and he played with me for a little while. When he used to teach me, for 2 or 3 years he taught me. And Dad later on, he found a job with the St James Theatre. Remember the St James Theatre where St James used to be in Elizabeth Street? As clarinet player, he became first clarinet player. He stood there for quite a while, and then the war broke out, interned. Why? Because his name was written on different documents that the military police had picked up of people who were associated with Italian organisations. So he was interned for about 7 months, 8 months. He got out, but he had to prove he was not a security risk to the country. I have got a copy of the actual court depositions taken at that court hearing, where we saw all the questions that were asked of him in relation to whether he was a security risk or not.
Yeah.
Well, enough about Dad anyhow, because Dad eventually took a position with the National Military Band, the ABC National Military Band. Does anybody remember that? The ABC National Military under Stephen York. They used to play on the ABC every week, and semi-classical music, and in the town hall too. Sydney Town Hall. We often went in there to hear him play with the band. It was a good, first-class band. Notwithstanding all of that, when he got out, when he was released from internment, when he went into retirement, he went to a milk bar opposite the Enmore Picture Theatre in Enmore, where it was when he was picked up then. Nevertheless, he did a bit of teaching afterwards and retired. Now, at Dad's side, one father, no other brothers and sisters, grandfather, only one. On my mother's side, just the opposite. Completely the opposite. My mother was a DeLuca. She was one of 4 or 5 in the family, siblings, 5 siblings. But the grandparents, there were 10 of them. So I started to look into this. But what made me look into it? Well, in 1955, I was just married. I was interested in credit unions. And because of my interest, the local church, the local curate, formed a credit union, the Earlwood Credit Union. And I was very interested in finance because I wanted to buy money to a house. I attended meetings of the association. I was elected in 1961 to go to Montreal to the International Conference of Credit Unions to represent New South Wales. And while I was over there, I caught up with some cousins in America, in California, in Texas, in Florida, New York and Boston. And I found out, I met some actual people who were related to me. Mum had talked about them to me, but I didn't know who they were. I even met Mum's half-sister before she died in Boston. I couldn't believe it. But it wasn't until Mum passed away in 1980 that I thought, just have to put this together somehow. And I sat down. I wonder how many of you people remember the Newcastle earthquake. together. It was with the help of one gentleman, Emmanuel Giuffre, who helped me because he was a migrant from Italy. He was the deputy mayor on the island of Sardinia, and he knew everybody on the island, and he helped me build the connection with the different families of the Giuffre family. Mum's mother was a Deleuze, subject to getting permission to do so by the local authorities. 90% of the authorities said yes, but on certain strict conditions. They're not to be used for any commercial purpose, and we want to know who gets them, where they're going to be located, and thirdly, they want a copy for themselves. And that's where I first saw these reels. We were successful after 3 years of negotiations in getting the complete set, I thought, from where we came from, the Aeolians, to prove we can get them. And we can now get them from any part of Italy. So, but it was very difficult.
So Dominic was responsible for getting over 500 reels that are actually housed at the Coast.
We've got 50 reels from the Aeolian Islands, and we've got a couple of others from other areas that different individuals have shown some interest in wanting to look at the reels and see the actual pages where the entry is made with someone who is married or born or died, and it's got the names of the parents and different details are all there on these. You need a special reading machine to read it.
Which Coazit have.
Coazit bought one for us.
That's
and
right.
we got the reels. And it took nearly 3 years to get them all. We had to pay $30 each for those. And that's what your donation at the door paid for.
So
the
if
stages.
you're from that part of Italy, it's very easy to research
Yeah.
because of these reels. Other parts of Italy, we don't have all that much documentation, but we do speak about various websites that one can go to now. And our secretary treasurer, Maria Linders, actually speaks of that stuff every second meeting. So anyway, so Dominic, look, thank you very much. We should probably call it because we're actually late.
Well, just what I meant to say,
We want to have our guest speaker.
the most important thing I had was I did in the period that I was before this meeting of the family history group in early stages, certain people were very helpful to me. We've got somebody here tonight who was one of the original members of that committee. And there we have here, Loris Morg over here. Thank you, Loris, for all your support over the last 14 years. Different ones on the committee have helped me immensely. I just don't want to fail you to mention the fact that there's Diana Manganaro, who was just walked in with a trolley. Thank you, Diana, for all you've done for me. And Josie Valley, and all those others, and in fact, Anthony Ravesi there. He's been my right-hand man for the last 4 or 5 years. Thank you, Ravesi. I thought that we could tell people to come here and talk to you, to tell you their story of how they happened to come to this country, or their parents, be it what it may, and tell the story of how they found Australia and what they've achieved. Look, I've had people like Tony Pantano, Tony DeMarti, Chris Shani, Chris Sadati. I've even had Nick Cerrone, some of you remember recently, Mark Tedeschi, the Crown Solicitor here. They've all got Italian extraction there somewhere. And last of all, I got it. I got the consul himself to come. That was last year. I think some of you people will probably saw him. Look, thank you for putting up with me.
So thank you, Dominic, very much for all that you've done for the group, because Dominic has been so passionate about this organization since its inception. He's one of the founding members, and last year when he decided to step down, I was fortunate enough to be asked to take his place, and I'm also very passionate about the group, and I certainly hope that I can follow in Dominic's footsteps, sort of according to his plan. I'm certainly trying my best. So anyway, thank you very much, Dominic, for all of your work with the group. We all thank you. So tonight we have a very special guest, a lovely man, Chris Iacono, who's sitting here in the front row. And Chris is the owner of a olive grove called Bunna Bunoo. Not Bunna Bunoo, Bunna Bunoo, correct? Yeah? And which is in in the Maitland region in the Hunter Valley. So we have Chris here tonight, and I'm going to speak to him a little bit about his family history, but more so about his products and how he manufactures it. So if we could have a warm welcome of applause to Chris Iacono. Welcome. How are you? Good to see you. Thank you. You good? So Chris's olive grove is actually located in Hunter Valley, and you purchased it how long?
2001.
And when you purchased it, the property, it had olive trees on it.
Yes, the olive trees were a little bit over 3 years old, and there were nearly 4,000 trees. And the people that had actually planted the trees had realised that there was a hell of a lot more work than they thought. And it was a married couple. They didn't have a lot of extra help, so they put it on the market. And a couple of naive people came along and bought it, which was us. But at the time, my wife said, look, we know a little bit about olives. We're Italian. Perhaps we could eat a few tons of olives from time to time. Let's buy this and see how it goes. And that's how it all happened.
Wow. So you weren't actually, when you got out of high school, the first thing you did in your career was not owning an olive grove.
No. I've done a number of things. When I left school, I became a motor engineer, and I served my apprenticeship at that, and then I opened a service station and workshop in Neutral Bay, and I was there for something like 28 years. During that time, I did a lot of other types of businesses. I ran a restaurant for 10 years in North Sydney. I was part owner of Mezzapika Cakes at Leichhardt, who was owned by my brother-in-law. I spent 8 years there as well. I did a bit of property development, bought a few farms and chopped them up into blocks of land and made houses for people. I became an importer and exporter, and I travelled the world.
Wow.
Just a few things.
A few things, right, yeah. So, like the climate in southern Italy, where your family originated, correct?
From where my parents came.
Hot summers, cool, crisp winters. The area there is actually perfect for cultivating olives, correct?
Yeah.
And how does that compare with where your grove is now? Do you find some similarities?
Well, we have very hot summers in the Hunter, and quite cool winters, and that's very much the climate of southern Italy, Calabria and Sicily, and that area. So it lends itself to grow same sort of varieties that are grown there. And the varieties, we have 5 varieties that we grow. We have Coriojola and Frontoia, which are our olives, and we produce oil from them, and we have about 2,000 of those trees. And then we have 3 table varieties, which are Kalamata, which are obviously Greek, very popular, and we have Jumbo Kalamata, and we have Manzanillo. We have 1,100 Manzanillo trees, which are a good eating olive as well.
You produce everything on site?
Yeah.
All of the oils. The range of stuff that you do is from olives itself, jarred or fresh, or
Yes.
jarred. Olive oils, all sorts of olive oils, which I really want to talk about. I mean, without olive oil, I think in our life we would not have the great taste sensations that we have. But you do natural olive oils and also infused oils, correct?
Yes, we do.
All processed there.
The majority of our oil is sold as normal extra virgin olive oil, but then we fuse olive oils as well, and we have lemon myrtle, we have lemon fused, we have chili oil, and we have rosemary and garlic oil.
You're making me hungry.
And there's always new ones coming out all the time.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. So on site there isn't a restaurant or anything. It's
No, we have an on-site shop which we sell our products at, but we don't sell meals or anything like that. We do morning and afternoon teas, and we do bus tours, and I think there's quite a few people here that have been on bus tours to our property.
Yeah, well, a couple of years ago, I think the group actually went up for that, which we're going to look at doing possibly sometime next year.
Yeah, well, Dominic took me into having a function there a couple of years ago, nearly 3 years ago, and we did something we'd never done before, and that was we had 56 people there for lunch. And my wife and a few friends of hers all got together, and they cooked lunch for 56 people. So I think it was a pretty good day, actually.
Yeah. So,
we enjoyed it.
yes, we'll certainly have to plan this in the next 8 months or so. So tell us about the process. You know,
Oh, can I just interrupt? I should have apologised.
For what?
For the
Oh, great. Okay,
Can I do that?
Absolutely. Yeah. Chris,
I should have done this when I first sat
Oh,
here,
that's
but
right. We're all
I'm
done.
just a fill-in tonight. You know, I'm one of those people that's filled in for all sorts of things during my life. But tonight I'm just a fill-in. Tonight, sitting right here where I am, should have been my sister-in-law, Gabriella Conti, who was going to talk about her book that she launched recently, about her family. She comes from the other end of Italy. She comes from the northern end. I often think that she's not really Italian. She's probably part German or Austrian because she's so close to the Austrian-Swiss border. But unfortunately, she's been in hospital for the last 4 or 5 weeks. She's recuperating, and I believe she's coming home on Saturday. So I'd just like to apologise for her not being here, and for people who probably thought she was going to be here and came under and I'm here sitting under false pretences. But let me say, she is well. She's making a recovery. She'd also asked me to pass on her good wishes to everybody here and to thank Coacet for the lovely flowers they sent her recently. She's not dead, she was just a lot of flowers. So I should have said that initially.
No, that's good. But
Let's keep going now.
we have rescheduled Gabriella for the 27th of August, which is on your sheet. And she's coming in to talk about the book that she authored called, the English translation is
Wings of the Rainbow.
On the Wings of the Rainbow. Yeah. So anyway,
Yeah.
we're looking forward to that.
Okay.
So tell me, what's the process on the Grove? You wake up in the morning, you look at the trees, you see, for example, how long does it take from one season to the
Okay,
next?
well, usually an olive tree takes about 3 to 4 years before it starts to fruit.
Yeah, right.
And then it grows to about 15 years old, which are ours at that stage now, which are their maturity. By that stage, they've got trunks like this.
Yes.
But olive trees produce olives forever. There are olive trees in the world that are supposedly 5,000 years old in Cyprus and in the Middle East, and they're still producing olives, and they just produce as good olives as they are today as they did 4,000, 5,000 years ago. So olives trees never die. They need pruning, they need looking after and so forth. But our olive trees are now getting to, as I said, maturity, so we're not going to get any more olives off them each year, but we're getting to a stage where we're getting 50 to 70 kilos of olives off per tree.
Per tree?
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so that's a lot of product.
It's a lot of product. That relates to something like 40 or 50 tonnes of olives per year.
Wow. So the process is you wait until they're mature. There must be a sign you can tell when they are. Explain that maybe. But
Well, the procedure is the flowers come about September, October, and in November they set. Probably 50% of the flowers on the trees fall off, but the ones that are there and what the tree can support produces olives. And by about December, the petals have fallen off and you see a little pin head of an olive. And slowly that grows through the end of December, January, February, March, April, and then around the end of April, May, and sometimes into June, we then harvest. So we only get one harvest a year.
right.
And if we want green olives, we harvest them when they're green. If we want black olives, we wait till they've gone black. And it's the difference of ripe fruit and not ripe fruit. So that's how you get black olives and that's how you get green olives. People come to our farm and they say to us, could you tell us which are your green trees and which are the black trees?
That's what I was
Well, they're all the same.
Really? So that's how, okay, fantastic, yeah. So you must, actually my favorite olive. What's your favorite?
Yeah, well, you never try an olive on a tree to see if it's ready.
You don't?
Because they're very, very bitter and you would never eat another olive if you ever did that.
Okay.
So you've got to look at them,
Yes.
you've got to cut them, check them inside and decide whether they're ready or not to be harvested.
So when you harvest them, what's the first stage?
Well, firstly, we harvest our oil olives with a mechanical harvester, and it's a tree shaker.
A tree shaker.
I didn't bring one tonight, but we have a video. If anyone would like to come to the farm, or the people that have been have seen that video, but we have a video of my son Richard harvesting trees. He's the harvester.
That's right, because I saw it on your site. Well, what is your website address again?
It's www.bunnabunoolives.com.au.
So Bunna Bunoo, B-U-N-N-O.
Yeah.
Yeah, not...
And incidentally, Bunna Bunoo, I could tell you that Bunna Bunoo is Italian,
What does it mean?
but it's not. It's Aboriginal, and it means big rocks. And somebody called the place Bunna Bunoo. There are big rocks there, I can assure you. We found them, and found them the hard way by wrecking agricultural equipment, trying to mow lawns and things like that in between. So we've removed all the big rocks now, and we have lovely soil and grass in between the trees. But that's what it means, big rocks.
Big rocks. So back to the process, yes. So then you harvest them, depending on what product you're going to be turning them into, oils or...
We harvest the olives for oil, as I said, by machine.
Yes.
But the olives that we use as table olives, we pick by hand.
Okay.
And we go around with a big basket in front of you, and you pick the olives off the trees, they fall into the basket, and then you tip them into bins, and the bins are picked up and taken away.
Right, so the tree shaker is only for...
oil olives only.
Oil, because it doesn't matter if they get damaged.
Because it tends to wreck the olives if they're shaking the tree, not the tree themselves, but the olives. But it doesn't matter because within about 12 or 14 hours, you're going to belt the hell out of the olives to press them into oil anyway, so it doesn't matter if you damage them.
Right, exactly. So the other ones are actually hand-picked, so you have a group of people. You have
They're hand-picked.
employees?
We take them back to our processing shed, we wash them, we grade them, and we then put them into big barrels which have just pure cooking salt and water. And that's how we brine our olives.
Brine, yeah, okay. Yeah.
And they sit in those drums for about 3 or 4 months until they're ready to be put into jars like you might see over there.
Which I'm going to grab some in a minute, so you can talk about some product. But one of the things I wanted to actually ask was, what advice you could give people about how do you know a really, really good tasting olive oil? I mean, there's so many different brands out there, of course, you know. I mean, the Italians are fantastic at making it. You know, there's extra virgin, but there's all sorts of oils. But what sort of tips can you provide here at this forum about what's the correct way to drink a glass of wine and enjoy a glass of wine and understand its complexity? How does that equate?
Well, first of all, extra virgin olive oil is probably the only oil produced in Australia, whereas in Europe, particularly Spain and Italy, which are the biggest producers, they produce extra virgin olive oil, they produce virgin olive oil, they produce olive oil, and they produce an oil called pomace, which is the lowest part of olive oil. And they get these different grades by putting the olives back into the machine and repressing the olives at various times. And they do this about 5 times. Now, in Australia, we don't do that. We press the olives once, we throw the olives away after that. So most of the oil in Australia, if it's good quality, is extra virgin. And you get extra virgin oil by testing it, and we test all our oils, get sent to University in Wagga, which are a world testing authority. And the oil has to be less than 0.8% fatty acid. If it has more than 0.8% fatty acid, it's not extra virgin anymore, it's virgin oil.
Really? Okay. Right.
So now, the general public doesn't know about all this, but somewhere in the back of the bottle, it's got all what it is.
Okay. Yeah.
But you'll find most oil in Australia, first of all, is extra virgin. I don't know of any that isn't. And also, the oil that's produced in Australia is very fresh. And you may have got today when you came to a little brochure like this. Most people would get these.
It was inside that.
And one of our own brochures. But this tells you all about Australian olive oil. And let me tell you, although I come from an Italian heritage, the oil that you get from Italy or Spain isn't fresh, and it's probably 6 to 9 months old before you get it. And the theme of olive oil, as I said, is fresh. Fresh is better. That's the deal. So if you are buying olive oil, although we would like to feather the nest of the Italians and the Spanish, don't buy their oil, buy Australian olive oil. First of all, you should buy Bunna Bunoo. But if you can't buy Bunna Bunoo oil, and I'll see everybody later if they want to buy some, if you can't buy Bunna Bunoo oil, at least buy Australian olive oil, because as I said, it's fresh. And
some beautiful ones, yeah.
People don't understand that. They think oil is just a commodity, but it's no different to orange juice. You wouldn't buy orange juice that was 9 months old. Well, it's the same with olive oil. You buy olive oil when it's fresh. So if you are buying olive oil, check the use-by date on the back of the bottle before you buy it and make sure it's got a long use-by date.
So explain to me when the olive oil that you're testing goes to the university in Wagga and it doesn't pass the test for extra virgin oil or quality oil, is that because the process was incorrect or the olive wasn't ready?
It's all to do with nurturing the olive tree through its sphere of that year.
Of that year.
Yeah, if you don't give it enough water and if you don't give it enough manure and look after it, you won't get good quality oil.
Okay.
So lots of people may end up with virgin oil and not extra virgin.
Right.
Now,
so explain to most people what's the difference between virgin and extra virgin? I mean,
well, as I said earlier, the difference is the 0.8% fatty acid. You may not notice the difference in tasting it.
Yeah.
You probably wouldn't. But I mean, if you're ethical, you can't sell that oil as extra virgin.
No, right, exactly.
Our labels say it's extra virgin. So when we get the sample back or the results back from Wagga, we're all sitting there thinking, well, what's it going to be like?
So every year you go through this?
Every year we have to do that. And our oil comes out somewhere between 0.3 and 0.5%, which means that it's way down in the category, so it's really extra special olive oil. If you're getting olive oil tested back and it's 0.8%, it's just on the verge of not being olive oil. Now, perhaps there's a lot like that.
It sounds like a bad cholesterol reading, really.
And I've got to say that when I talk fatty acid, everything in olive oil is good for you. It doesn't matter what you've got wrong with you, whether you've got a headache, whether you've got a crook leg, or you've got cancer, or you've got high cholesterol or anything. Olive oil will not harm you. No doctor will tell you that you shouldn't use olive oil, but there are lots of other oils that you shouldn't use.
Yeah, like
one of the worst oils you can use is canola oil, because they say it gives you macular degeneration of the eyes. So if anyone's using that sort of oil, don't use it anymore. Use olive oil.
So the color of oil. So when you look at extra virgin compared to virgin, is there a difference in the colour?
Yeah. Well, the colours change because if you pick your olives early and they're all green, you will get a much greener oil, which is also much bitter because the olives aren't mature yet.
Right.
If you get olives which we call on the turn, where they're starting to go black and they're still green, you will get a middle of the road oil. If you produce olives that are absolutely black and starting to shrivel up on the trees, you're getting a very mature olive, and you'll get a really, really mild oil, which was not a lasting oil.
Okay, right.
So you've got to be careful and you pick them at the right time. We tend to pick our olives because we're looking for consistency all the time. We tend to pick our olives on the turn. So if somebody comes to our olive grove and buys a bottle of oil and then they come back next year and they want to buy another bottle, they really would expect that oil to be the same as what they bought last year.
Yeah, of course. Right.
So it's imperative that we pick our oil at the same time every year so we get that consistency.
So of course, you're affected as much as vineyards are sort of affected with cold snaps or too much rain, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? Each year, you have a whole different
Scenario of weather and
a
stuff.
scenario that you're confronting, I guess, yeah? Well, what's the last few years been like? Is it...
Last year was terrible. This year it's been a lot better, but we've had to fight off a disease called lace bug, which is a little bug. It's like a flea, and it comes from trees and shrubs. It's an Australian bug. It's not overseas, and it pierces the leaves on the olive tree and it kills the leaf. The leaf drops off and then the tree goes to sleep because the tree breathes through its leaves. If you don't have leaves on a tree, the tree won't breathe and then it just goes to sleep. So when that happens, and we had a bad dose of that this year, we have to revive the tree and try to tell the tree it's not dead, please come alive and please produce some more leaves so that you can produce olives again.
Well, yes, so what size is your property out there? How many
Our
acres?
property is a reasonably small property. It's 60 acres, of which we've got about 40 odd acres of trees. And as I said earlier, we've got nearly 4,000 trees. That's regarded as a medium olive grove. The biggest olive grove in New South Wales is at Merriwar with 55,000 trees.
Wow. Right.
The biggest olive groves in Australia are on the New South Wales-Victorian border with over 1 million trees. In fact, we've got some of the biggest olive groves in the world in Australia, and yet we only produce less than 1% of the world's production of oil. We're not very big in the way of that, but we're getting bigger.
Wow, okay.
We're getting good at it.
So you have some tips on your website about how to actually sort of taste
Don't plant any olive trees.
No, that's right. I don't think anybody wants to plant olive trees. But so if I could just read this. One of your tips is about the aroma. And you say, roll the oil around the cup, right, to fully wet the sides, swirl to warm the oil, with the palms of your hands, and inhale deeply 2 or 3 times. Some words to describe olive oil aroma include fruit.
Testing olive oil is a bit like you see people testing wine, where they put it into their mouth and they gargle it around their mouth and they spit this beautiful wine out. I drink it, but they spit it out. With olive oil, it's a little bit different. You don't have to spit it out. You actually do swallow it.
Right.
And as it goes down your throat, you start to feel the oil when it gets down here. You don't feel it in your mouth so much.
Okay.
But it's an art, and I'm afraid I haven't got it. I'm not good at it. My wife was very good at it, and there are some excellent people that do this on a regular basis. In fact, we have olive oil tastings at the farm.
Yeah.
We have a class of usually about 12 people, and they sit there and they test all these different olive oils, and the guy, the tester, is a friend of mine called Steve Mitchell. He takes them through it and they learn how to do it.
Right. So how many employees do you have on your grove?
None.
None.
We have a family.
It's a family business.
Yeah.
So it's yourself.
Yeah. It was myself and my wife. My wife passed away 12 months ago, unfortunately.
Our condolences.
And so I've got to do her work as well as mine. And I've got 2 sons, being Greg and Richard, who work on the property. We do employ from time to time local farmers who want to earn extra money.
Right.
But we do that as required.
Yeah, exactly.
But we do most of it ourselves.
And your biggest seller, in terms of your product, I'm just going to walk over to the table.
Okay.
Yeah. Chris, you want to come over here too?
Yeah, our biggest seller is the 250ml bottle of oil, which is that one. That's our biggest seller. Our next biggest seller is 500ml. We also have a 750ml, which is wine wine bottle size. And then we go to a 2-litre cask, which is the same as a wine cask with a tap on it, which is a great way to buy it. One of the enemies of olive oil is light, air and heat.
Right.
And with the cask, there's no air gets into the cask because as you're using the cask, it just sucks it dry. So there's no air. It's a good way to buy olive oil. We also supplied in 4-litre tins and 20-litre tins for restaurants and hotels and things like that. But anyone who wants to buy a 20-litre tin, I can supply it.
So, once you bottle the oil,
Down here.
yeah, I'm coming back. Yeah. So once you bottle the oil, it's good for a year, 18 months.
Normally we put a year use by date on our oil, but
Right.
we find most people use up the oil within about 3 months.
Yeah. Well, it's, I mean, being
My
Italian.
advice to people is don't buy a lot of oil. Decide how much oil you would use over a 3 months period and buy that quantity. You may see deals in Woolies and Coles and all that for big quantities of oil, but if you don't use that oil, it'll go off before the time. And rancid oil is terrible oil. Sometimes people say to me, "How do I know it's rancid?" Well, just smell it and you'll know it's rancid.
Really? Yeah.
It's awful.
I mean, for some reason, I never realized oil could actually go up, but we use it so often that,
Well, that's what I was saying. Oil, the fresh bit of oil is really important.
So Chris, is
There are a few other products there as well. There's olives, as you can see. We produce a chili sauce, which is in the red bottle. We also produce vinegars. We've got balsamic vinegar. We would have liked to have used an Australian balsamic vinegar, but we couldn't find a good one. So we went back to the old country and we import balsamic vinegar from Modena in Italy, where it originally came from.
Yep.
And we treat the balsamic vinegar, the black one that is, and we make caramelised vinegar.
That's my favorite, yeah.
And it's a best seller.
I'm buying a bottle of that tonight.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, so before we wrap up, I thought it might be worthwhile seeing if we had any questions from the audience. Would that-
Yeah. Chris, the trees you've got, now, are they spaced a certain distance apart?
Yes.
First question. Second question, on a visit up to Moree a little while ago, they had a machine that prunes trees. Do you use a
We do,
automatic
yeah.
pruning
In fact, there's
machine?
one of the pictures on the screen where there was a, it's that picture.
And the third question, where do we buy your oil?
From me.
Is it available in stores?
Yes, I'm sad to say not as many stores as I'd like to see it, but we do a lot of business on farm in our on-farm shop. We do markets in Sydney. We do have some stores in Sydney, and I'm happy to tell you who they are. But we do a lot of mail order business as well. And we do personally do. If people order from us online or by fax or by phone, we will deliver the order to
So
you.
the big monopolies haven't got it?
No.
Woolworths and Coles?
No, definitely. You won't ever see us in any of those two stores.
But they do sell Australian oil, don't
They do, yes, but they buy oil off the biggest producer in Australia, which is Cobram Estate, and it's a good oil. I can't say that it's not. They won a couple of big prizes recently at a New York olive oil show. But we don't want to get involved with those. We go to much smaller places like delis, fruit shops, butcher shops, and we're in a lot of places like that. But I wanted to show you, no, that's not the picture.
This one?
That's it there.
Okay.
If you look up through the bushes there, you'll see a machine up in the top,
Yeah.
right up there. Well, that's a machine that actually prunes the trees.
I thought it was a giraffe.
Looks a bit like that. That's a machine that's made in Israel, and it cuts the tops off the trees. And every 2 years we cut the tops off, and we cut down one side.
Right.
And what that does is keeps the trees low, so when we shake them, we actually can shake the tree properly. If you let the tree grow too high and you try to shake it, you lose the inertia up the tree and the olives don't fall off the top. So that's why we prune them.
Just cut one side?
Sorry?
Why do you just cut one side?
Well, what we do is, the first 2 years we cut the top on one side, the next 2 years we cut the top and we do the other side. That way we continue to have growth, we continue to have olives, because otherwise we wouldn't have olives for a year in between.
Right.
So that's the reason.
I've got 2 more questions.
Yeah, here, I'll hand the mic, 'cause then everybody can actually hear you.
Yes. Are you being affected at all by the coal mines?
I don't think that's working.
Are you being affected at all by the coal mines?
No, not in our area, thank goodness.
Right.
No, we are about 80 kilometres away from the nearest coal mine near an olive grove. There was some talk of a coal mine about 4 or 5 kilometres away, but it never went ahead. Now, we're in the eastern part of the Hunter. We're 35 k's north of Maitland, and there are no coal mines in our area, thank goodness. That is a real problem.
One more question was that when you travel around the world, you see olives growing in really rocky conditions. Do you have to fertilise them very much?
Yes, we do, yeah. Unfortunately, in Australia, our earth isn't that good, and yes, you have to do a lot of work on the soil to get them to make olive trees. If you look at, say, particularly in southern Italy, where you've got a big volcano or volcanic thing, the soils have got huge minerals in them, and they don't have to do hardly anything like that. In fact, they don't even irrigate some of the trees. I've seen olive groves in Sicily and in Puglia and in Calabria where they've no irrigation system whatsoever. But we have to have that, and we check the moisture of the soil, and we accordingly water the olive groves. And our olive groves divided into 10 blocks, and we do each block separately. We can do them automatically, but we do them separately because we test the moisture in each block. One block might get 8 hours of watering, one might get 4 hours of watering. It just depends where it is.
Thank you.
Yep. There's one here, I'll come to you in a second. There you go.
Chris, my next door neighbour came rushing over to my house 2 years ago and said, "You're Italian, I'm throwing out an olive tree." I grabbed it, stuck it in the ground, and it looks beautiful. What do I do now?
How old is it?
You say you did, I'd say it'd be about 3 years old.
Well, if you keep looking at it, in the next year it should produce some olives.
Really?
But you were talking about
But the other thing, it's very important, if anyone buys an olive tree and wants to put it in their garden, it's very important that you buy your olive tree from an olive nursery. If you go and buy it in somewhere like Bunnings or any nursery, you might find that it wasn't grown properly in the first place. I've known trees that 8 and 9 years old never made an olive.
No. Yeah, right.
The other thing is trees have got to be struck from a cutting. You can grow an olive tree from an olive seed, and I'm told that there are times when if you grow them for a seed, they will never fruit.
Really? Yeah. Interesting. Okay, we have another person up here.
I've never been down here before, I'm always up there. Not so much fun down here.
Chris, a couple of questions.
Sorry.
Oh, the lady behind me wants to know what fertiliser should she use with her olive tree.
Sorry, I didn't get that.
What sort of fertiliser should you
what's
use?
that? Well, we're very lucky. In the area we're in, we have a lot of chicken farms. So we use chicken manure. And earlier this year we put 100 tonnes of chicken manure through the olive grove, and that really gives the olive trees a boost. They wonder what hits them when they have all that. So mainly, most people use chicken manure because there's more of that than anything else. But you can use dynamic lifter and things like that, but that's very expensive to buy.
Now, Chris, what about in thunderstorms and hailstorms? Are olives affected as greatly as the grapes are? Do you have as much damage with the olives as a vineyard does with the grapes?
Olives are regarded as a citrus tree, and they get diseases and problems like most citrus trees. In fact, I think we get more than citrus trees. But we don't have any vines on our property, but we're not far away from the winery. But they have the same problems. They've got to monitor their vines all the year, as we do with our olive trees.
Mm.
We also, I said we did mechanical pruning. We do hand pruning as well. We have battery backpacks which are strapped around with electric shears, and we go through the olive trees, taking off the small branches with those.
Last question from me. When you're making the olive oil and you've got all that stuff that you throw away, what happens to that?
Sorry, say again?
When you're making the olive oil and you've got that waste, the residue, what happens? What do you do to that?
Well, in Australia it's not a problem yet because we're not big enough, but it just ends up getting put under trees as mulch. But in Spain, who is the biggest producer of olive oil in the world, they utilise that waste. They don't call it waste actually, but they compress it and they make briquettes out of it, which they burn in fires. They make fertiliser out of it, and they're also making food for animals out of it. And there are other things as well, but I'm not quite sure what they are.
Last question from me. The man sitting beside me tried to process a whole lot of olives a couple of years ago, and it was damned awful. We got the recipe from an olive place over in WA, and I'm wondering if you have a really good recipe that you would share with us.
Oh, secret one.
A secret recipe.
Hey Chris, I'll take the mic away from her now.
Actually, one of the biggest private olive groves in Australia is in WA. It's in a place called Gingin, which is about 150 kilometres north of Perth. And it was owned by a guy by the name of Tony Feeney. And he had 110,000 trees. A huge olive grove. He sold it recently to Chinese for $30 million.
Jeez.
So he's about the only guy that's ever made any money out of olives.
So is there anybody else that has a question?
Yeah, I also want to know the secret of what you do, because I've tried picking olives and they never work out. I don't know what it is. My mother could do it. Everyone else can.
Well,
I can't.
it's very simple to process table olives. When I was a little boy, I remember my mother used to process them in a terracotta pot we had, and we've still got that pot incidentally, and we would do 8 or 10 kilos of olives, and Mum would change the water every 2 or 3 days and put fennel seeds in there and all sorts of things like that. We don't, because we're processing so many tonnes of olives, we can't do that. What we do is we use sterilised water, which we sterilise ourselves, and we use, as I said earlier, ordinary cooking salt, nothing else. And we have a formula, which I'm not going to tell you what it is, because my boys told me not to tell
Just a couple of
anything.
things.
But we have a formula, we mix that up, and we put those into either 60-litre barrels, which are about that high, or 200-litre barrels, which are this big. And for the first couple of weeks, that all starts to get an effervescence and all stuff that's going on inside, because what you're trying to do is take the bitterness out of the olive, and you can do it by the salt and water. After about 2 weeks, they settle down, then we top the drums up with more brine and put the lids on, lock the lids on very tight.
For how long?
And they stay like that for about 3 or 4 months, and then we start testing all those barrels. And as we test the barrels, if they taste nice, and it's not a bad job to test olives, I can tell you, then you mark the barrel as okay and it's ready to be jarred whenever we want to. But if you're doing them at home, you don't have to change the water. We did some the other day as the first lot of olives we got this year, and we did them as what they call oliva scacciata, and that's the easiest way to brine olives, because they'll brine quickly because they're green, and you've opened up the flesh, and the salt brine will penetrate quickly. Now, if you don't either slit them or open them up, it takes twice as long, 3 times as long to brine them.
So we found part of the recipe. What's the first part?
Anyone wants a job at this time of the year, come up.
Okay, well, if I'm free one, I would love to. I'm coming up, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, here's one more question for Don.
Chris, we had a wonderful time up there
Thank you.
when we organised that tour up to your Bunna Bunoo, and I hope we have the chance to go back again. The question I've got is, you mentioned that there's 60 acres, is that right, 60 acres? And only 40 acres at this stage are under cultivation. Do you intend to expand to use
No,
more?
we wouldn't plant any more olives, but what we do is we run 10, 15 head of cattle, and we've got the part that's not planted with olives, we have into paddocks, and we run a few head of cattle, break the monotony of just olive trees. So we run Black Angus cattle. But we could, if we wanted to, plant more olive trees, but we're doing okay. We're getting up to 4,000 and 5,000 litres of oil per year now from our olive grove, and that's about what we're selling, so our capacity's right. If we ended up where we need more oil, we would look to a local olive grove, and we harvest a lot of other olive groves because we have the machinery to do it. We would look for another olive grove close by that has the same variety of olives that we have, being Frontier and Corriojola, and we would be able to then sell out that oil as the same sort of oil as we make.
Any other?
Question,
Yes?
just a bit of trivia. The oldest olive tree in Australia is still fruiting, and that's out of Elizabeth Farm.
Yes, it is. And it was planted by Mrs. MacArthur. It's a scraggy looking olive tree if you've seen it. Unfortunately, nobody ever looked after it in its infancy, but if you've got an olive tree and you're planting it, the secret is you've got to look after that olive tree well, prune it well in its first 3 or 4 years of life. Otherwise it ends up being a scraggy looking tree.
One question we have for you, well, two questions I guess. If we can't buy them in the big stores, Coles and Woolies, etc., can we get your oil at Aldi or IGA?
We do sell to some IGAs.
Right.
In our area where we are, we've got 4 IGAs and we sell to the whole 4 of them. But IGAs generally are fairly independent. They can do what they like.
Sure, okay. And excuse me, failing that, we can get it online. So
You can get it online,
yeah.
And there are a number. If you look at our website, I'm pretty sure it shows you on our website what our where you can buy it in around Sydney.
Good. Yeah, what you want?
We are, just incidentally, we are talking at the moment to Ritzel in Five Dock, and they look like putting our oil in their shop, which would be great for us for that area.
Yeah, great.
Chris, I'd like to ask, when you and your wife first bought the property, maybe you didn't realise that it was going to be successful. So what I want to know is, how did you learn the progress of producing and doing everything successfully, commercially successful as you have done?
Okay, well, in the process of looking at our olive grove, and we didn't intend to buy an olive grove, we wanted to just buy a property in the Hunter. We had been going to the Hunter for about 20 years, and we had some friends that owned a 1,000-acre property not far from where we are. So we just thought we'd buy a couple of 100 acres, and we would either build a house or have a house on it and go up there once a month and have cows and a bit like a McDonald farm with a chook and whatever. As we went looking around, the first farm we found was the one we actually ended up buying, and it happened to have the olive trees, and that's how we got interested in olives. At the same time, there was a conference being held at Cypress Lakes at Colburn in the Hunter, and I decided I'd go along to that conference and see something about olives. Well, I walked away from that conference thinking, this is a piece of cake. You just plant the trees and you watch the olives roll down some magic conveyor into a bottle, and the bottle produces money and the money goes in the bank and you just sit there. Well, it wasn't anything like that. But I don't regret 1 minute of it. We've had 14 years of very, very hard work, and it's been a big, long learning curve. And in that time, I've been to conferences all around Australia. We're this year having our national conference back in the Hunter after 14 years. I've been to conferences on the west coast of the US in California, and I've been to a conference in Spain and one in Italy. So you learn as you go along, and we're optimists. We learn pretty quickly. And,
So how many years, Chris?
There's
you've
no
had this?
better way of learning than getting your feet dirty and your hands dirty, and that's what we did.
And, so Chris, how many years again have you owned the old
14 years,
14
this is our 14th year.
Wow. So I have one more question, I think, before we'll wrap up, yeah? And, two more, sorry, I forgot, sorry.
You've been talking about olive trees. I'm interested to know what type of olives you use to make extra virgin oil. If you use one type or different type of
I
olives.
said that earlier. Frontoio and Coriojola are our oil olives, and they're both Italian varieties. We were also very lucky that the people who planted our olives chose the varieties they did. There is about 30 different varieties grown in Australia. I think that our varieties are very, very good for what we do. We've got excellent middle-of-the-road olives in Frontoio and Coriojola. And as I said earlier, our Manzanillo olives are a good table olive. Our Kalamata are world's best. So we're really very happy and we're lucky that we've got, but there are other ones like Pecale, Bunna, all sorts of, and they all have different qualities, but I think ours are very good.
And you use a combination of them?
Sorry?
Do you use a combination of them?
Yes,
Oh.
yes.
Thank you.
Okay. And last question from John Ray. Thank you, John.
Chris, you noticed my brother, he had 100 acres up there, and he went to, for the benefit of the questioner earlier, he went to the local TAFE college and learned all the tricks about how to blend and crush the oil. In fact, he won silver medals at the local show, and he'd never been on a property in his life. So it just shows you that it's not exactly rocket science in the sense that you can. There are facilities to learn. There are facilities to learn as you go along anyway. And as I said, there's a course at wherever the TAFE is up that way for the benefit of those who might want to go into that business. Thank you.
So Chris, if you're ever going to sell the property, let us know. Because the Italian Family History Group might like to invest in it, because we all love olives. Yeah? So I just want to take an opportunity to actually thank Chris. I'll put that down. Thank Chris for your time with us. So once again, the website, it's very easy. I mean, if you just Google Bunna Bunoo.
Yeah, www.bunnabunooolives.
Easy to find. I did all week to get.
But I think everyone should have got a brochure tonight. The website's on the back of the brochure. Our telephone numbers are there. Our email address is there. My mobile's there, which rings all the time. I've got it switched off at the moment because I'm told I have to do that. But it's 24/7.
Fantastic. So it's a great site to go to now. So the Italian Family History Group always give a small gift to our guest speakers, and we have this little presentation for you tonight for coming. No, it's good. It's not all well. It's a book of all the regions of Italy, the food of Italy, region by region.
Thank you very much.
So I think that will work with a lot of your oils for sure. So.